This way.
Well, I mean, entrenched interests. It's a very valid question, but how did we cope with them? Well, you know how it works. You have these people who, you go against these interests, and these people, as I explained, they don't forget it. They're very revengeful. But at the first stage, people who benefit from this, they are totally on your side, so you can subdue their resistance. The problem becomes when people get used to what the benefits they're getting, and they switch their attention to other things, and the other guys don't forget it. So in every democracy, it in the end results in clashback. And in the end, that's what happened, that coalition that changed my government were very much the old people who now came to people with their new agenda and basically told them people who had already thought that what they have is taken for granted, they voted for the old ones. So that happens. But that does mean we shouldn't be doing that. Because now that we cleaned the system of these entrenched interests, to bring them back would be very hard. Because people would not tolerate, say, if policeman in the street takes bribe. People will not tolerate if the issuing documents takes 7 days instead of 7 minutes. They just are used to this kind. People will never tolerate to, again, get unjust treatment at university. And I think the main way how you change the mentality is through bringing meritocracy. I don't measure democracy by just freedom of speech or freedom of election. Lots of people have freedom of speech and freedom of election. Basically, in the world, most of them have now. But real democracy, from my standards, is measured by the way how social lift works, how fast you can go up, how fast you can advance. So from that standpoint, the way how to defeat the entrenched interests and vested interests is to bring new forces. All the time open opportunities. All the time, and get new energy from different generations, but mostly from youth. And that's what is important. On the other question related to how salaries were paid in the beginning, that's exactly the point. We were pulling ourselves from the mud with our own shoestrings. And the way how we did it, I went to UNDP, and I told UNDP, why don't you pay salaries to 200 tax collectors, to 100 anti-corruption investigators, to our ministers, and to our MPs. UNDP created a private fund. There were a number of rich people all around the world, starting from people like George Soros or many others that contributed. And actually, we got enough funds for 1 year to pay, say, presidential salary. My predecessor had salary of $150. He never got interested in it, right? We had ministers that had salary of $70. But then we gave ministers like $3,000, $5,000, etc. We gave MPs the same. We gave the investigators. So they start to go after corruption cases. And initially what we had to do, for instance, the son-in-law of my predecessor, Edward Shevardnadze, was arrested for tax evasion. And we had pension arrears. He paid enough money to get pension arrears paid to pensioners for 3 months. Now, there is the trick. This guy, my predecessor, Shevardnadze, and his son-in-law, together they owned the biggest cell phone company in Georgia. They still own it. Even if they paid tax arrears in the beginning, I didn't grow rich as president. His company got 5 times richer in my presence. Because business increased, economy went forward, and he went up. He started to play by the rules, okay, he kept this company, we didn't take it away. But then the other thing was like head of railway, he had to pay enough money to repairs, former head of railway, to repair all the railway cars we had, and we are talking about, I think it was at that moment 30 million or so. Head of road department, we built in Georgia 6,000 kilometers of road. We had head of road department, which has multi-millionaire, but roads were not built. Well, first hundreds of kilometers were built with his money when we came in, because he had to pay, otherwise he would go to prison. So that's how you also go after entrenched interests, I would say. And that's how we pulled the, and what was the third question about? The gas thing. Now, Russia interrupted gas without warning us. Suddenly, there were mysterious explosions on gas pipelines and electricity lines in Russia in 5 places. Some mysterious terrorists blew them up. And so what happened that we were without electricity and gas at the worst time of winter, and that's where good neighbors help. And President of Azerbaijan, who at that moment had his own shortage of gas and electricity, disconnected half of Azerbaijan's population, which is a country of 10 million people, to supply Georgia with electricity and gas for several weeks. And the other neighbor, not immediate, but after, it's very close to Georgia, Iran, its president called me and said, by the way, we have old pipeline from Soviet times of gas. It was not used, but we can supply gas. Let's work and repair it fast. And while Azerbaijan was supplying it, then Iran switched on the gas. And then when I asked him, okay, because it was pumping for 1 month, and I asked him, oh, so how much do we pay? He said, don't worry about it, we just do it. So it's important to have good neighbors, others that the source of energy. But then what happened, meanwhile, Russia understood that it had no longer monopoly. So when you don't depend upon one supplier, then it's much easier. And then we immediately started, we bought power generators, we bought big the gas power station. It took us 6 months to install it, very fast. And then we refurbished our hydropower capacities, we built new lines. It took us 2 years, but basically, as I said, Georgia was importing 80% of its electricity, but we were only utilizing 16% of our hydropower potential. Within 9 years, we went up to 30% of utilization. We still have 70% to grow, so it's a long, big growth sector. We liberalized this sector so much that people pour money into it, and now we have abundance of electricity, because we also have lines in all directions. So that's how we do it. And what about trade unions? You asked something.
Yes, something about sending your workers home without terminal benefits. So.
Well,
where did you find
I have to disappoint head of trade unions. I had bad relations with trade unions in my country. Because the problem is that, no, again, I mean, I respect trade unions that really are genuine. The problem we had trade unions with, these were all Soviet trade unions with vested interests. So they had all these big properties, which they owned, and they were there not to cooperate, but to basically undermine things. So, for instance, like, and this is an international thing, with trade unions. So we not only had problems with our own trade unions, but immediately every time we did something, sacked people, restructured some sector, we will get problems with American trade unions, with the ILO in Geneva, with all kinds of people. But the problem is that, I discovered that sometimes sucking one job in public sector gives you 5 to 10 jobs in private sector. Depends how we do it. It's just a matter of doing it smart way. That doesn't mean that government should withdraw from all spheres. I don't believe in that. I believe that government should be proactive. Government should lead private sector into many sectors. That's very important. But that should be small and efficient government, not big and overwhelming government. That's the difference. Because big also almost always means inefficient, from my standpoint. Lots of workers also means inefficiency for the government workers. Because if you have I know there was, okay, you can say all these old women who were sitting down and saying issuing passports and IDs, where you had to stand in line and they were so miserable, even if they had not asked for bribe, you had to give them one because they were miserable. I mean, okay, sacking them was a bad thing. And then you had these young people that, in the end, 80% of our bureaucracy were people under the age of 30. And and then with young people, with one young people who do it with computers much faster than 100 the others and without taking bribe, right? So was it worth to keep those ladies, the other ones for? I don't think so. Would trade unions object against their sacking? Of course. Would we listen to the trade unions? No. Because we had to think about the country. And ultimately, I think they will, even these people who were sacked, if you had the policeman owning a grocery store on the street, and he was also supposed to guard order in his street. We fired him from his position, and he just sticks to his grocery store. I think it's good for his grocery business, and it's good for the country that he's no longer a policeman. That's how it works.